Welcome to What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ.
And I'm MJ.
And this is your low-key ghetto Bible study.
And we've made it finally to the end of Esther.
Yep.
It's
been a long time coming.
Yes. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We'll look at the last few verses of chapter 9. That's verses what?
20 to 32.
20 to 32 and the 3 verses of chapter 10.
Yeah. That's okay. So, as usual, if you're just joining us on this journey, we would recommend that you catch up on the rest of the book. Because this is the last dregs. This is the end. And everything else will give better context and background and an idea of what we're talking about in this one.
Right. You could check out, we created an Esther playlist on our channel, so you could just follow that. Or if you check the description, you'll see a list of all the previous episodes in there as well.
As usual, we invite you to pause at this time and say a prayer, and then we'll get into it.
All right. And as usual, what we do is we're going to go through, TJ is going to review the passage and sections. We'll talk about it, what stood out to us, and then we'll answer our main questions, what we learn about God from this, and what can we learn about how we should live our lives.
Yep. So we're starting with chapter 9, verses 20 to 27. And so far, in the first part of chapter 9, we were looking at what happens on D-Day. We were talking about the Jews defending themselves and what happened as a result of that. So that has passed. And so from chapter 20, we're talking about what happened after that. Right. From verse 20, not chapter 20. From verse 20, we're talking about what happened after that. So basically, we're told that Mordecai records the events. So everything that happened, it looks like from the very, very beginning of their wars and troubles, Mordecai possibly records everything.
Okay.
Right? And
I have no grounds to say this, but I get the feeling, no grounds, that Mordecai wrote Esther.
Yeah. Because let's talk about this after. Okay. Let's talk about it after. Okay. So, he records the event, and then he sends letters to the Jews. And when we looked at the first half of chapter 9, we talked about the fact that some of them celebrated on the 14th, and some of them celebrated on the 15th, based on what happened in their respective areas. And so Mordecai sends a message saying, hey guys, from now henceforth, we're going to celebrate on both the 14th and the 15th of the month of Adar. Right? Every year, we're going to have this celebration. And he said that they should feast, and they should send gifts of food to each other, and they should also give to the poor on these days. It's supposed to be a celebration. And so the Jews continued the celebration that they had begun based on what Mordecai had written to them. So yes, we last year we celebrated on the 14th here, and the people over there celebrated on the 15th over there. But from this year going forth, we're celebrating on both the 14th and the 15th. And it says that it documents why they celebrated. Because Haman had schemed to destroy them and had cast lots, or pur, for their demise. But when the king found out, he sent out orders that led to the destruction for Haman that he had intended for the Jews, and this became the fate for him and his sons. And so the days of celebration were called Purim, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, based on the word pur, meaning lots. And because of what was in the letter and everything that they had experienced, the Jews set it as a custom that they, their descendants, and anyone who joined them, as a community, or possibly their religion, would follow these customs at the same time every year. So that's 20 to 27. Okay. This was a struggle, honestly, because there's not much happening here.
Okay, it's a lot of verses, but
there's not much happening here. But what I found interesting is that by sending out this letter, Mordecai establishes himself having a position of power among the Jews, right?
He's the Persian second-hand man, second in command.
Yeah.
He's the Persian, so he has authority over the empire, people of the empire. But that I never thought of that.
Yeah.
By sending out that letter, he's saying, I am a leader of the Jews. Not necessarily in the sense that I will boss you around, but I have influence over you, and this is how I'm going to use my influence.
Yes. Yeah.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. But I feel like that happens naturally. You put somebody, like we spoke about when we spoke about Mordecai's role change. We spoke about Barack Obama becoming president, and I feel like immediately he became it like mentor is not the right word because that it kind of talks about relationship.
Maybe role model.
A role model. Yeah, he became somebody to look up to for Black people everywhere. So I think that that's a natural progression.
When one of us is in power, there is that there's also that localized power among us.
Right. And that's that we could I didn't see this, but that's something we could take away about us recognizing our influence when we in positions.
I think I have that as I have that as one of my points.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
The second thing I have that stood out to me is that the celebration was accepted for the Jews at the time. The Jews at the time said, yes, we are going to celebrate on the 14th and the 15th. But they went a step further and they saying, we are not the only ones who are going to celebrate. We're going to have our kids and our grandkids and anybody who decides to become one of us, they are going to celebrate as well. So I thought that was interesting that this is not a temporary God. Well, I don't want to say God. I don't know that they were necessarily saying, I want to assume that they say, yes, God has come first. We have received our deliverance, but it's not just we celebrating this right now. For the rest of our history, we are going to celebrate this deliverance. And we had this conversation last night where you were saying that this is still something that they celebrate to this day.
Right.
Yeah.
Like what stood out to me about that is that the celebration after the new decree goes out is spontaneous. People are feasting and enjoying themselves, and even their celebration after they fight their enemies, that is spontaneous. But Mordecai, and as we find later, Esther, has to send out a decree, another decree, I guess, to make it a commemorative celebration.
Yeah.
So after their immediate deliverance, it's just like, yes, we're happy, but the remembrance of it, the moving forward, the future, looking back, has to be something that is asked of them. And I thought that is so
but I don't
human.
I don't know that it was necessarily asked because like I feel like as humans we love to celebrate, and it's like birthdays. We will like if after our first birthday, like we could have not celebrated again after that, but it's something we want to do. So I don't know, unlike anniversaries. So I don't know if it's necessarily that they were being asked of, but I think it was like, let's make this a uniform celebration.
But this is something the Jews have been doing. You have Passover. You have I think you have the one with the tent celebration to commemorate their time in the wilderness. So I think this is something they've learned to do. To look back, this is where God has brought us from, and our children will always know where we came from.
Yeah.
So this is something, but I thought it was interesting that they had to
document it.
Right. Yeah. Had to send out a letter and have everybody do it.
You have any points you want to share? I have a couple more, but let's break it up.
I just thought it was cool that this festival, this, you call it a festival, is still celebrated up to this day. I went to just see what it's like, and there seems to be a lot of enjoyment, and just my favorite part of the whole celebration is that when they read the story, anytime Haman's name comes up, the crowd boos. I feel like that is definitely a good way to read the story. But it made me think. This is Persia. This is the Persian Empire. This is before the Roman Empire. Does that mean Jesus would have celebrated Purim? That was what came to mind, and I'm like, that would be interesting.
Yeah.
That would be because
Yeah,
he celebrated Passover.
Yeah.
And so if it existed at that point in time, if though the Jews brought it back to when they moved back to Judah, well, I don't know if everybody moved back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it was sort of because I think we had this conversation at some point where we talked about the 127 provinces, including being inclusive of
Jerusalem. Yeah.
And I think it would have spread. I think it would have spread, and so that's an interesting thought. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. One of the things that I found interesting is that in the very brief retelling that they do in those verses, the king is almost set as the hero of the story. Because they talk about the king finding out.
Oh, the recap.
Yeah.
They
talk about the
and
king
he kills Haman.
The king finds out and he sets a decree to have Haman destroyed. And I was like, but I understand. I understand. But at the same time,
But the name of the book is not Xerxes. Okay.
But that's my thing. Because my follow-up point for that is that Esther is not mentioned in this part of the book. And it's also not mentioned the part that she plays. Right? So that's what stood out to me in this, that we mentioned the king in the brief retelling, and we put him in a position of heroship or of savior, in terms of what happens to him, which I understand, because he was actually he's the one who came through for them in relation to Haman. But Esther is not mentioned. I mean, the book is named after her. Like this is a flashback to chapter 1, where we read an entire chapter about in a book named after Esther, and Esther is not mentioned. Like, that's where it took me back to. And my final point on this was that the sending out of this letter to me was significant and important. And I think we talked about this a little bit. I mentioned it a little bit. Is because the people in Susa or Shushan celebrated on the 15th, and the people everywhere else celebrated on the 14th. And so this sending out of this memo, of this letter, was like, guys, I know you celebrated on this day and you celebrated on this day, but going forward, we're going to celebrate on both days. Yeah. And
that leads back to the whole unity we were talking about.
And I think it was a nice thing to not choose either or. Because it was, I think each day was significant to each group because of this was their point of celebrating their deliverance from where they were. And so accepting both days was like,
you have the surrounding villages celebrating on the 14th, but the Jews in Susan have not been fully delivered yet. Their enemies are still a threat to them. And so to choose that day to celebrate is to say,
to almost dismiss
the
fact that they were still in battle on that day.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. So those are my points for that section. You have anything else you want to add?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So we're looking at the last, I think that's 6 or 7 verses, 28 to 32. So Mordecai sends the letter out, and then everybody's agreeing, yes, we were going to celebrate on these 2 days, and it's going to be celebrated by the Jews of every generation, everywhere. And it will be continued, and it will be passed on, and the reason for it will be passed on as well. Right? I think that's the significant point that they make. And then they get a second letter, and this one is not just the first one Mordecai sends it, but this one is Mordecai and Esther, or Esther and Mordecai. Yeah? And I think it was lending another level of authority to the letter.
And credibility,
yeah. And so they write this letter together, and Mordecai sends it out again to all the Jews in the provinces. And I like that they specifically mention that they send them words of peace and truth to establish and verify the dates of Purim based on what Esther and Mordecai had decreed, and what the Jews had set for themselves as well. And it was for the generations to come based on when they had fasted and cried. And Esther's decree confirmed everything related to Purim. And I like that it ends with by saying that, and it was recorded in the records of, I guess, Persia. I'm not sure what records, but like that's the end of this portion.
Okay.
So, what are your thoughts? What are your views?
I just wish the previous generations had done a better job of documenting and recording history. Like, I feel like there is some debate as to whether Esther is like historically
The book.
whether it's not, they're saying it's historically accurate in the sense that a lot of the details are they can be, what's the word, corroborated, is that the right word? But you're not sure that it actually happened. But like, I think if the people in the past did a better job of documenting, but maybe it's not even their fault because it's the generations after them that had to preserve.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I have a bone to pick with those people.
It's still previous generations.
Right. Yeah. That because like there's so many the history of the this and the this king, and I'm like, is it? I feel like if those books had been found and have been found, I don't know if anybody's listening and knows about them. I would be interested to hear about it. I feel like it becomes difficult to challenge certain books in the Bible, as not being true or being historically inaccurate. So I wish there had been a little bit more preservation.
There's that fire, the fire of Alexandria, and
okay.
If we're tracking it, that would have been, would that have been before or after Persia? That would be after Persia. I think if it's potentially after Persia, then that would tie into. That's what we need to research.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I like that Esther steps in here and lends, like we said, her authority, her power, her credibility to Mordecai's mission. I guess it would have been partly her mission as well, but she was like, you know what? I put my stamp, my seal on this as well. Make it credible. I like that, especially since I was annoyed that she was not mentioned in the previous portion of the thing. Cause like, just put her life on the line,
multiple times.
You understand? So I liked that she came in to play here, and it was like, I will do one last deed in this storyline. I put my seal on it. So I appreciated that. And I think this second letter in particular was an excellent show of goodwill to the Jews from the Queen and the King's second-hand man. Like, I feel like, the people in authority have you at heart. They have your best interest at heart. They're encouraging you to take 2 days to celebrate. It was a show of goodwill. That was fun.
Yeah. But that's interesting as well. How like the Jews made it work, because in certain, so let's even talk about the Caribbean, based on what the primary religion is in an island is how your holidays will be set up. So people who do not who are not, what do you call them? I don't know. People who don't have the religion, the main religion within the country that they live in, how do they manage when it comes to their holidays, their holy days?
You mean that are not nationally recognized?
Right.
Oh.
So it's not a public holiday. It's not like, how do you get time off of work? Or is it that a lot of those holidays are they about the inside and not necessarily, because
okay, then I get your point, but like then you have places like Trinidad, right? Where it almost feels like everybody's religious holidays are acknowledged, right? Because I'm thinking, Diwali is celebrated there, but it's not celebrated here. So how do the people of that religious persuasion or those religious beliefs, we know that they still celebrate it. Like we know they still celebrate it. But it raises the question, like, why is it that, I think this should be a side conversation, right? 'Cause I'm going off track here. But I was like, I'm thinking, like, why is it that certain religious holidays are deemed to be significant enough that we take a day off,
Mm-hmm.
and in other instances, where is it simply because we are a minority that our day is not deserving of us taking a day off?
Right.
Like, that's just my thought
Because
on it.
like if you think about Jews and Sabbaths, like, is it in places where Sundays are the holy day, the day off? Like, how do they manage? Is it that Saturdays are a regular day for everybody else, and they just have
So
to?
I guess it's like his weekend.
It doesn't. It's not going to be as significant as
a weekday.
a weekday
Yeah.
that you take off.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
That's
thought it
interesting.
was interesting for them in a heathen place to just be able to say, okay, we're going to take this day off. But I feel like
These 2 days off.
these 2 days off, right? I feel like how what the economy worked back then, it was more like every man for himself, in the sense that you don't have these large establishments that
No capitalism.
right. So it's I'm a farmer. I make enough olives and grapes to feed my family, and so
And I sell something.
right. And so I don't have to. I can take whatever days off I want. Yeah.
And this conversation just made me a little miffed that our denomination has no religious holidays. I'm just throwing that out there. Somebody set us up. Give us some holidays.
Like, we need. Okay, I was about to say we need to commemorate something, but never mind. I'm not ready for the whole of persecuting us for what we believe. I'm not ready for that. It's okay.
My final 2 points on that passage were that the second letter seems to say, like, if anyone is still not sure, these are the days we celebrate. Because it made me like think of like being a teacher, and you give instructions, and then 5 minutes later somebody's like, Miss, what do we have to do? It gave me that kind of vibe where we're expecting and anticipating that somebody gonna come here and be like, we celebrating the 14th or the 15th. What we doing, guys? What's happening? They're like, just in case, both two. We're doing both two. Yeah, so that was interesting to me. And my final point here is that it was repeated again that it will be passed down, and not just the actual celebrations, but the reason for the celebration. And it gives me the impression that this was something significant to them to pass it down. And saying it out loud, it makes sense to me, because they almost didn't have the chance to pass anything down or have anyone to pass it down to. So just being able to say, we'll pass it down would have been a big deal.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool point.
You have anything to add?
No, my last point is about the chapter 10.
Okay, so let's get to that. So chapter 10 was like 3 verses. And quite fittingly, the book of Esther ends with no mention of Esther. Chapter 10 is all about.
Chapter 1 didn't mention her either.
That's what I was saying. That's what I was saying. It's fitting. The book started without her. It ends without her as well. Chapter 10 is all about Xerxes and Mordecai. And it says that at this point, Xerxes sets tax on his entire kingdom. It says versions of the Bible talk about it being on both the land and the sea. He was like, even if you're on boats out there, you're still owing taxes. And all the things that he did, and the promotions and the power that he gave to Mordecai were recorded in the records of Media and Persia. And Mordecai was second in command to the king, and he was held in high esteem by the Jews because he was their advocate and their helper.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I still vex with those preservers who didn't preserve. But yeah. Mordecai, yeah, my man, continues to look out for his people and continues to be a man of influence, and I'm here for that. Yeah, I think
my thing was that reading the first verse about because multiple versions said he laid tribute on the land and sea, and I was like, what does that mean?
Mm.
What does that even mean? But that was the benefit of reading multiple versions, because I finally found a version that said he charged the people taxes. And for me, it was interesting. I actually made a point of it because it feels like things are so good at this point that he's able to set taxes on all the provinces. Like, it's probably a peaceful time. Because I mean, like, when there's war, you can't raise the taxes. You're looking for a coup. So it feels like things were settled, things were peaceful, and he was like, okay, guys, pay me taxes now. Pay me taxes now. And my only other note is that Mordecai is recorded as being good with the king and the Jews, and I think that's a nice It made me think about Jesus. Yeah, in favor of God and man, and I think that's what it brought to mind. That here he is, being respected and promoted by the guy in charge, and as well as being respected and revered by his own people.
That literally ties into one of my points on God. That he always gives his people an advocate. And so I don't know that the person writing was meant for us to draw that conclusion between Mordecai and Jesus, but like that's the connection I made, the comparison.
Yeah. This is something I think this is hilarious. Well, I found it hilarious because last time when we were talking about this, I started saying something and you immediately said exactly what I was going to say. We found the ending of the book of Esther anticlimactic.
Yeah, it was just like
after all this hype and the drama and action and all the the spy music and the and all that drama, we just like,
and they all lived happily ever after.
But especially the end of chapter 9 and chapter 10 did give me very much the end of a black movie where they do and what's her name? Was Mordecai settled down and he became the king's right hand man and he was a good guy. And Xerxes, being the king he was, charged everybody taxes. It gave me that. It very strongly gave me that. But it really wasn't. I was a little bit I wasn't let down. And it makes me wonder, have I actually really read the book of Esther before for me to feel this strongly about the end of the book?
I think we've never felt this strongly about the beginning of the book or any part of the book.
That's true.
I don't know what's the word. I think we became attached maybe to the characters and the story.
And storyline. Yeah. Okay. Our questions.
Okay.
Tell me about like what has this revealed about God to you?
Yeah. I just that same theme throughout that, God is not only capable but willing to protect and deliver his people, and by that I can internalize it for me. And the fact that he can use both people and circumstances to accomplish that deliverance.
Okay.
And I could be one of those people. And the not so good circumstances that I am in could be part of his plan for my deliverance. And the fact that, his people always have an advocate. And I could take that literally as in, he's going to send somebody to stand up for me in my daily life.
Father.
Yeah. And spiritually, he sent Jesus to be my advocate, and stand up for me and to cover me. And I think that's cool.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. I was thinking about the fact that when we talked, what was this? I think this was probably the first half of chapter 9. We made mention of the fact that many of the leaders in the different provinces switched sides. They became alliances for the Jews because they feared Mordecai. And, well, I say switch sides, but we don't necessarily know that they switched sides. But I feel like some of them originally would have been against the Jews, right? And it made me think, like, because we talked about like Mordecai's spin around from serving to the gate to the king's second-hand man. And I think just considering that here are these people who may have still wanted, I mean, not at this point they can't afford to want him harm, but like people who may have initially wanted harm for him. And my point was that God has the ability to lift me up, even in the presence of those who may be plotting my downfall.
And turn your enemies into your allies.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. He will use those same people who were trying to bring me down to come to my aid. Yeah. So that's it. I started writing a second point, but I was not sure when I was done writing it. I was like, is this a lesson about God, or is this something you want to apply to your life? And like it could go either which way. But and I think it kind of sounds a lot like something you said a while ago. Is that even at the darkest points where I want to put on sackcloth and ash, I can cling to the hope that God isn't done yet.
That makes me feel nice and warm inside.
Yeah. So like no matter how bad it gets,
the story isn't over. Yeah. We still have the what do you call it? What do you call that at the end? That's not the postscript, the epilogue. We still have the epilogue to look forward to. Of you being right hand man to the king.
Yeah. So those are my takeaways for God. What about your life? What are you doing with your life?
This is the one I'm taking, and I need to apply. Not that I shouldn't have applied all the others before, but this reminded me of, we spoke about this in a side conversation, that the worship session with our family. And we spoke about, that night, we spoke about how we could develop our relationship with God. And in the side conversation, we spoke specifically about prayer. But there was one of our cousins spoke about journaling that night. And it clicked for me, because when we document what God has done for us, like, it can be so powerful. In order to document it, you have to be paying attention.
And processing.
Right. So number one, you're paying attention, you're processing. Oh my, this is something that God has done for me. And then you write it down. So later down the line, you can look back and be like, but why am I worried now? This is what God did for me then. Why can't he do it for me now? And so I think the Jews' habit of documenting, and not just documenting, but commemorating every year, every so often, celebrating that this is where God has taken us from. This is what God has done for us. I think that helps to build trust, and it makes facing disaster, I would hope, easier. And so that's something I want to adopt. I'm not sure how I'm going to do the feasting and celebrating part. But I think, like, significant moments in my life, not just birthdays and anniversaries, but like times that God has come through for me in a significant way, I want to record it, I want to document it, and I want to make it something to commemorate.
That's beautiful. That one point of yours kind of dealt with two of my points. So I'll just mention them quickly. It has been my experience, not necessarily me personally experiencing, but like observing that sometimes in our more conservative communities, we tend to want to police how people react to their breakthroughs. And even when we're not necessarily aware that they've had a breakthrough, but we tend to want to police how people, I don't want to say praise, because that's like a wide term, but when God does come through for us, sometimes we need to celebrate and have a party. Yeah. So I think that was my point, and it's a twofold for me, in that I need to mind my business and not be looking at how other people react and respond to their deliverance. Like, you decide to have a party, good for you, sis. Good for you, bro. Like, like this is how you respond to God's coming through for you. But I on the other hand need to take the time to maybe in some instances publicly
Okay.
celebrate the deliverance and goodness of God. And I think, like you rightly said, sometimes in order to very well do that, we need to document it.
Okay.
Yeah. And the second point I wanted to tie on that is that it is important to share the way God has come through for you with those who come after. So not necessarily the next generation, like kids and grandkids, but it could be those who've come after you right now. So the people who may have not been in your life when the breakthrough happened. Or it could be younger cousins or younger friends or nephews and nieces. Just people who were not there when it happened. But you share that breakthrough, you share that deliverance, and you maybe share how you celebrated that breakthrough and that deliverance, so that this isn't something that they can be processing and be like, well, when God comes through for me, maybe I can react that way, or maybe I should react that way as well. So you borrow from the Jews, and you pass it on. Yeah. But again, like you rightly said, this has to come with the documentation.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah.
Okay, so for me, I think the biggest takeaway from this chapter is that it is important to use my position and my influence to advocate for those who may have no voice or may not be in a position to speak up, and not just advocate with them for people above them, but in this case advocate for them with themselves. Tell them it's okay. You can celebrate your breakthrough.
Okay.
It's okay. God has come through for you in a awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping way. This is something you have every right to celebrate. Yeah. So I think that a lot of the times we think about advocacy and we think about speaking for somebody on their behalf to someone else. But sometimes you have to speak to them on their own behalf to themselves.
Okay.
So
that's
those
cool.
are my points.
I think we're done here.
Okay.
And that brings us to the end of Esther. We still want to do a recap kind of thing, and hopefully we can bring in some guests. We're still negotiating. I think we could convince them. I think we could persuade them. So that should be our next one. We want to just recap the story on a whole, revisit some of our major lessons and takeaways.
And our favorite moments in the story.
Right, yes. Yeah, our highlights. So, that's the end of Esther. We want to look at another short book based on a lady next. So you could look out for that as well.
And we're also very open to recommendations of what we should study next.
Yes, please let us know. Because the next book we do is very short.
Yeah.
So, let us know your thoughts and any comments, any questions. Okay, I don't know if we can answer questions, but we would love to think about that. We would love to think about your questions, not necessarily answer them, but yeah. So feel free to interact with us in the comments, and I think that's it.
Yep.
All right. So this has been What Shall We Say to These Things?
I'm TJ.
I'm. I'm hungry. Okay. I'm MG.
And until next time, we're out.